Linda Hayes stood nervously outside the military recruitment center, holding a crumpled paper with her acceptance letter. At 19, she had finally found a way out of her difficult life. Her stepfather didn't want her around, and she had nowhere else to go. Inside the center, several recruits waited for orientation. They were mostly young men who looked confident and strong. Linda felt out of place in her oversized jacket and worn sneakers. She sat in the corner, hoping nobody would notice her. A tall guy with a cocky smile looked her way. His name tag said Brandon. He elbowed his friend and pointed at Linda. "Check out the girl in the corner. She looks like she got lost on her way to the library." His friends laughed. Another recruit named Josh joined in. "Maybe she thinks this is a summer camp. Wait until she sees what basic training is really like." Linda kept her head down, pretending not to hear them. She was used to being mocked. Growing up in foster care had taught her to ignore bullies, but their words still stung. "I bet she quits on the first day," Brandon continued loudly. "Some people just aren't cut out for military life. They should screen better." The sergeant at the front desk called names one by one for processing. When Linda's name was called, she stood up quickly. As she walked past Brandon's group, he whispered just loud enough for her to hear, "Good luck lasting 24 hours." Linda entered a small office where a tired-looking officer reviewed her paperwork. He barely looked at her as he asked routine questions about her background and medical history. Everything seemed normal until he asked her to roll up her sleeves for a blood pressure check. Linda hesitated. She always wore long sleeves, even in summer, but she had no choice now. Slowly, she rolled up her left sleeve. On her forearm was a distinctive tattoo. A detailed black viper coiled and ready to strike. It wasn't like typical tattoos young people got. This one looked professional, almost military in design. The officer glanced at it casually, then did a double take. His eyes widened as he leaned closer to examine the mark. His relaxed posture changed completely. He sat up straight, his face suddenly serious. "Where did you get that mark?" he asked, his voice sharp. "My uncle gave it to me when I was 12, Linda answered honestly, before he disappeared. "He said it was important and I should never remove it." The officer stood up abruptly. "Wait here. Don't move." He left the room quickly, leaving Linda confused and worried. Minutes later, he returned with a senior officer, a colonel with gray hair and decades of service ribbons on his uniform. The colonel's name tag read Harrison. Colonel Harrison entered the room and immediately focused on Linda's arm. When he saw the black viper mark, all color drained from his face. His hand trembled slightly as he reached out, stopping just short of touching the tattoo. "That's a black viper mark," he whispered, his voice filled with disbelief. He looked at Linda with completely different eyes now, eyes filled with shock, respect, and something that looked like fear. The young officer looked confused. "Sir, what's a black viper mark?" Colonel Harrison ignored the question. He pulled out his phone and made a call. "General Matthews, I need you here immediately." "No, it can't wait. I found something impossible. Someone with a black viper mark just walked into my recruitment center." Linda sat frozen, not understanding what was happening. The mark she had carried for 7 years, the mark she thought was just her uncle's way of remembering her, had just changed everything. And from the look on the colonel's face, whatever it meant was far more serious than she could have imagined. Colonel Harrison asked Linda to move to a private conference room. The young officer who had been processing her paperwork looked completely confused, but followed orders. Within 30 minutes, a stern-looking general arrived. Along with 2 other military personnel Linda didn't recognize, General Matthews was an intimidating man with sharp eyes that seemed to see right through people. He entered the room and immediately asked Linda to show him her arm. She rolled up her sleeve again, revealing the black viper mark. The general studied it carefully, then looked at Colonel Harrison. "It's real. I can't believe it, but it's real." "Someone want to tell me what's going on?" Linda asked, her voice shaking slightly. General Matthews sat down across from her. "Miss Hayes, that mark on your arm is not just a tattoo. 20 years ago, there was a classified special operations unit called Black Viper. Only 30 soldiers ever received that mark. They were the most elite warriors our military ever produced. Linda's confusion deepened. My uncle wasn't a soldier. He worked construction. At least, that's what he told me. What was your uncle's name? The general asked. David Chen. He took care of me after my parents died when I was 10. Then he disappeared 2 years later. I never saw him again.
Ow!
The general and colonel exchanged meaningful looks. Colonel Harrison pulled out a tablet and typed something. He showed the screen to General Matthews, who nodded grimly. Miss Hayes, the general said carefully, your uncle was David Chen, codename Viper 9. He was one of the most skilled operatives in the Black Viper program. He disappeared 15 years ago during a classified mission. We assumed he was dead. Linda felt like the room was spinning. That's impossible. He never mentioned anything about being a soldier. He was just my uncle who taught me self-defense and survival skills. He said every girl should know how to protect herself. And self-defense and survival skills, Colonel Harrison repeated. What exactly did he teach you? Linda thought back to those 2 years with her uncle. He had taught her hand-to-hand combat, how to move silently, how to assess dangerous situations, how to read people's body language. At the time, she thought he was just being overprotective. Now she realized it was military training. He taught me a lot, Linda admitted, but he made it seem like games. I didn't realize it was actual combat training until I was older. One of the other officers spoke up. General, if Viper 9 marked this girl, he was identifying her as protected. That's protocol. It means he wanted other Black Viper operatives to recognize and help her if necessary. But the program was disbanded 18 years ago, another officer said. Why would he mark her so recently? Because he knew something, General Matthews said thoughtfully. David Chen disappeared during Operation Silent Thunder. That mission went wrong, and 3 operatives died. We never recovered their bodies or found out what happened. If Chen survived and went into hiding, he had a reason. Colonel Harrison looked at Linda seriously. Did your uncle leave you anything else? Any letters, documents, or items that seemed important? Linda hesitated, then reached into her jacket pocket. She pulled out a small USB drive on a chain around her neck. He gave me this before he left. He said to keep it safe and never lose it. He said if anything happened to him, I should give it to someone I could trust in the military. But I never knew who to trust, so I just kept it. The room went silent. General Matthews stared at the USB drive like it was a bomb. How long have you had that? 7 years. Since the day he disappeared, the general carefully took the USB drive from Linda. This could contain classified information about what really happened to Operation Silent Thunder. Information that people might kill to keep secret. Are you saying my uncle is in danger? Linda asked, fear rising in her chest. Your uncle has been missing for 15 years, Colonel Harrison said gently. But you might be in danger now. If the wrong people find out you have information from a Black Viper operative, they'll come looking for you. That's why you're here, isn't it? Linda realized suddenly. Not just to join the military. Your uncle sent you here. He knew that eventually someone would recognize the mark and protect you. The general nodded slowly. David Chen was brilliant. If he's still alive, he's been planning this for years. Miss Hayes, we need to examine what's on this drive. But first, we need to make sure you're safe. From this moment on, you're under military protection. Outside the conference room, Brandon and the other recruits who had mocked Linda were being processed for standard training. They had no idea that the girl they laughed at was connected to one of the military's most classified and dangerous secrets. They had no idea that her presence had just triggered a chain of events that would uncover truths buried for nearly 2 decades. And most importantly, they had no idea that Linda Hayes wasn't just another recruit. She was the key to solving a mystery that had haunted military intelligence for 15 years. General Matthews took Linda to a secure facility on the military base. The USB drive her uncle had given her was analyzed by cybersecurity experts while she waited in a protected room. Colonel Harrison stayed with her, answering what questions he could. The Black Viper program was created for impossible missions, Harrison explained. Operations that couldn't be acknowledged publicly. Your uncle and his team saved countless lives, but they did it in complete secrecy. Why was the program shut down? Linda asked. Harrison's expression darkened. Operation Silent Thunder was supposed to be a simple extraction mission. Scientists who wanted to defect from a hostile country. But when the team arrived, it was an ambush. Someone had leaked the mission details. 3 operatives died, and the rest barely escaped. The program was immediately disbanded because we couldn't trust our own intelligence anymore. 2 hours later, General Matthews returned. His face was grave. "We've accessed the drive.
What?
On it changes everything we thought we knew about Operation Silent Thunder." They moved to a secure briefing room where the USB drive's contents were displayed on a screen. Linda saw documents, photographs, and video files. Her uncle had documented everything. David Chen suspected there was a mole inside military intelligence, the general explained. For 6 months, before Operation Silent Thunder, he secretly investigated. This drive contains evidence that someone high-ranking was selling mission details to enemy forces. Colonel Harrison leaned forward, studying the documents. Did he identify who the mole was? Not definitively, Matthews replied, but he narrowed it down to 3 suspects. All 3 are still active in military intelligence today. One of them is now a senior director. Linda felt sick. So my uncle disappeared because he found out about a traitor. We believe so, the general confirmed. The ambush during Operation Silent Thunder wasn't random. It was designed to eliminate the Black Viper team because they were getting too close to exposing the mole. Your uncle survived and went underground, but he couldn't come forward without proof. This drive is that proof. Then why didn't he just send it to someone? Linda asked. Because he didn't know who he could trust, Harrison said. The mole had access to communications, surveillance, everything. Chen's only option was to wait until the right moment and the right person. He chose you. The general pulled up a video file. There's a message here. It's addressed to you, Linda. He recorded it the day he gave you the drive. The screen showed her Uncle David sitting in a dim room. He looked tired but determined. Linda's eyes filled with tears seeing his face after so many years. Linda, if you're watching this, it means I didn't make it back, David's voice said from the recording. I'm sorry I had to leave you. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you the truth. But I need you to know that everything I taught you was for a reason. You're stronger than you think, braver than you know. He paused, emotion crossing his face. The information on this drive exposes someone dangerous, someone who betrayed their country and killed good soldiers. I couldn't stop them alone, but you can. Find someone in the military you trust, someone with integrity. Show them the Black Viper mark. They'll know what it means, and they'll protect you. The video ended. Linda wiped tears from her face. Her uncle had been preparing her for this moment for 7 years, even though she hadn't known it. The 3 suspects Chen identified, General Matthews said, pulling up their profiles. Commander Patricia Wells, Colonel Marcus Stone, and Director James Lockhart. All 3 had access to Operation Silent Thunder details. All 3 are still in positions of power. How do we prove which one is the traitor? Linda asked. Colonel Harrison smiled grimly. We used the same tactic your uncle would have used. We set a trap. We let it leak that we've recovered evidence from a Black Viper operative. We watch to see who panics and makes a move. That sounds dangerous, Linda said. It is, the general admitted. But your uncle trusted you with this responsibility. And now we're trusting you too. You're not just a recruit anymore, Linda. You're part of something bigger. Over the next 3 days, carefully controlled information was leaked through military intelligence channels. A rumor spread that evidence from Operation Silent Thunder had been recovered. General Matthews and Colonel Harrison watched carefully to see who would react. On the 4th day, something happened. Director James Lockhart suddenly requested emergency leave and booked a flight out of the country. It was the reaction of someone who knew their secrets were about to be exposed. That's our answer, Colonel Harrison said. Lockhart is the mole. He's running. Not if we stop him first, General Matthews replied. He made a series of phone calls, coordinating with FBI and military police. We move now before he can escape. Linda watched as decades of betrayal were finally about to be exposed. Her uncle had given his freedom, his career, and years of his life to protect this evidence. Now, finally, justice would be served. But what Linda didn't know yet was that Director Lockhart wasn't planning to run. He was planning something far more dangerous, Linda herself was about to become his final target. The secure facility where Linda was staying went into immediate lockdown. General Matthews received intelligence that Director Lockhart wasn't fleeing. He was mobilizing resources. Within hours, unusual activity was detected around the base perimeter. "He's not running," Colonel Harrison said grimly, reviewing security reports. "He's attacking. He knows if we expose him, his life is over. He's making a desperate move to eliminate the evidence and everyone who knows about it." Linda felt fear grip her chest. How many people does he have? "Lockhart has spent 20 years building a network," General Matthews explained. "Operatives loyal to him, mercenaries on his payroll, people who owe him favors. He's calling in every asset he has." The base went to high alert. Military police established defensive positions while Matthews coordinated with FBI counterintelligence. The evidence from Linda's USB drive was being uploaded to multiple secure locations simultaneously. Even if something happened to the original, copies would survive. Around midnight, the attack came. Not a direct assault on the base, but something more subtle. The power grid feeding the facility was sabotaged. Emergency generators kicked in, but several security systems went offline for crucial minutes. During that blackout, armed intruders breached the perimeter. They moved with military precision, suggesting they had professional training. Base security engaged them immediately, but the attackers knew exactly where they were going. They were heading directly toward the building where Linda was located. Colonel Harrison grabbed Linda's arm. "We need to move you now. There's a secure bunker beneath this building. You'll be safe there." But as they moved toward the stairs, an explosion rocked the building. The attackers had breached the main entrance. Gunfire echoed through the corridors as military police tried to stop them. "They're between us and the bunker," Harrison said, quickly changing plans. "We go up instead. The roof has a helipad. We can extract you by air." They ran up the stairs, Harrison leading with his weapon drawn. Behind them, they could hear the attackers fighting through base security. These weren't ordinary criminals. They moved like soldiers, coordinated and efficient. On the roof, the night air was cold and the wind was strong. Harrison radioed for helicopter extraction while Linda caught her breath. She could see the chaos below, emergency lights flashing, security forces moving in organized patterns. 2 minutes until extraction, Harrison told her. "We just need to hold this position for 2 minutes. But they didn't have 2 minutes. The roof access door burst open and 3 armed men emerged. Harrison immediately engaged them, his training evident in every movement. He took down one attacker, then another, but the third got past him and headed straight for Linda. Everything her uncle had taught her suddenly made sense. All those games had been combat training. Linda's body moved on instinct. She dodged the attacker's grab, used his momentum against him, and executed a perfect defensive throw that her uncle had drilled into her hundreds of times. The attacker went down hard, stunned. Linda didn't wait. She ran toward Colonel Harrison, who had neutralized the other threats. The sound of helicopter rotors grew louder as their extraction approached, but then a voice called out from the roof access. "Stop, or everyone dies." Director Lockhart emerged, holding a detonator. He looked different from his official photos, desperate and dangerous. "I've planted explosives throughout this building. 47 personnel are still inside. If that helicopter lands, if anyone moves, I detonate." General Matthews' voice came through Harrison's radio. "Stand down, Colonel. We're reading the explosives." He's not bluffing. Lockhart walked slowly toward Linda, his eyes fixed on her. "You should have stayed out of this, girl. Your uncle was a fool for thinking he could hide evidence and use you as some kind of insurance policy." "My uncle was a hero," Linda said firmly, her voice steady despite her fear. "He exposed you for what you are, a traitor." "I'm a survivor," Lockhart sneered. "I made choices that kept me alive and made me rich. Your uncle was too idealistic to understand how the real world works. That idealism got his team killed." "You got them killed," Harrison said coldly. "You sold them out." "What?" Lockhart shrugged. "And I'd do it again. Now here's what's going to happen. The girl comes with me. I leave the base safely. Once I'm clear, I'll tell you how to disarm the explosives. Everyone lives. Except me, Linda said. Except you, Lockhart agreed. But your death saves 47 other people. Seems like a fair trade. Linda looked at Colonel Harrison, who was calculating odds and options. The helicopter was hovering nearby, unable to land. Below, base security had the building surrounded, but couldn't act without causing the explosives to detonate. Then Linda noticed something. A shadow moving on the roof behind Lockhart. Someone had climbed up the exterior of the building without being seen. Someone who moved with the grace and silence of a ghost. A figure emerged from the darkness, and Linda's heart stopped. It was her uncle David Chen, older, weathered, but unmistakably him. He had been watching and waiting, and now he made his move. In one fluid motion, David disarmed Lockhart and disabled him. The detonator fell harmlessly to the ground. Years of training and experience showed in how effortlessly David controlled the situation. Military police rushed onto the roof, securing Lockhart. General Matthews arrived moments later, staring in disbelief at the man who had been presumed dead for 15 years. David Chen looked at Linda, emotion flooding his face. "I'm sorry I stayed away so long. I had to wait until you were safe." Until he was finished. Linda ran to him, tears streaming down her face. After 7 years of absence, wondering and hoping, her uncle had come back. Not just to save her, but to finish the mission that had cost him everything. The next few hours were chaos. Director Lockhart was taken into custody and immediately placed in a maximum security facility. Bomb disposal teams carefully disarmed the explosives he had planted throughout the building. Base security arrested several of Lockhart's associates who had participated in the attack. Linda sat in a debriefing room with her uncle David, General Matthews, and Colonel Harrison. David looked tired, but relieved. For the first time in 15 years, he could stop hiding. "I never stopped watching over you," David told Linda. "Every foster home, every school, every difficult moment. I was always nearby, making sure you were safe. But I couldn't contact you because Lockhart had resources everywhere. If he knew I was alive, he would have used you to draw me out." "Why didn't you just go to the authorities with your evidence?" Linda asked. "I tried," David replied. 15 years ago, I reported my suspicions through official channels. But Lockhart had influence. He buried my reports and branded me as unstable. Then Operation Silent Thunder happened, and I realized he was cleaning house, eliminating anyone who suspected him. I had to disappear to stay alive and protect you." General Matthews shook his head in disbelief. "You survived off the grid for 15 years while continuing to gather evidence against Lockhart. That's remarkable." "I had training," David said simply, "and motivation. I couldn't let my team's deaths be for nothing. Lockhart needed to face justice." Colonel Harrison looked at the evidence spread across the table. "With what we have now, combined with Lockhart's actions tonight, the case is ironclad. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison." Over the following days, the full scope of Lockhart's betrayal emerged. He had sold classified information to 3 different foreign governments over 20 years. He had compromised dozens of operations and caused the deaths of at least 17 operatives. The intelligence community was shaken to its core. David Chen was officially brought back into service and cleared of all accusations. He was offered his full rank restoration and honors, but he declined. "I'm too old for operations now. But I'd like to help train the next generation." Linda completed her recruitment processing, but now everything was different. She wasn't just another recruit. She was the niece of a legendary Black Viper. Operative who had exposed one of the biggest traitors in military history. Brandon, the young man who had mocked her on her first day, approached her one morning in the training yard. He looked embarrassed and humble. "Linda, I owe you an apology," he said. "I judged you without knowing anything about you. I said you wouldn't last 24 hours. I was wrong about everything." Linda appreciated the apology. "Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is learning from them." Several weeks later, a private ceremony was held at the Pentagon. The 3 Black Viper operatives who died during Operation Silent Thunder were posthumously awarded the highest honors. Their families, who had been told their loved ones died in training accidents, finally learned the truth about their sacrifice. David Chen stood at attention as his former teammates were honored. Tears streamed down his weathered face. After 15 years of carrying the burden alone, justice had finally been served. Linda stood beside him in her new military uniform. She had completed basic training at the top of her class. The same sergeants who had dismissed her initially now spoke of her with respect. Her uncle's training had given her an advantage, but her own determination and courage had carried her through. General Matthews approached them after the ceremony. "David, I have a proposition. We're rebuilding an elite oversight unit, something like Black Viper, but with better safeguards. We need experienced trainers who understand what it means to serve with integrity. Interested?" David looked at Linda, then back at the general. "Only if my niece can be part of the program once she's ready. She's earned it." Matthews smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that. Miss Hayes has demonstrated exactly the qualities we need: courage, integrity, and loyalty." Linda felt pride swell in her chest. She had come to the recruitment center expecting to be just another soldier. Instead, she had helped expose a traitor, reunited with her uncle, and earned her place among the military's most respected members. The Black Viper mark on her arm no longer needed to be hidden. It was a symbol of heritage and honor. Other operatives who saw it would know what it represented. As they left the Pentagon that evening, David put his arm around Linda's shoulders. "Your parents would be so proud of you." "I'm proud of you." "I'm proud of you too, Uncle David," Linda replied. "You never gave up, even when you had every reason to. You taught me that real courage isn't about never being afraid. It's about doing what's right, even when you are afraid." They walked together through the city streets, no longer hiding, no longer looking over their shoulders. The shadows that had haunted them for 15 years were finally gone. The journey that began with mockery, doubt had transformed into a story of redemption and triumph. Linda had proven that strength comes in many forms, and heroes don't always look like what people expect. She was ready for whatever came next. Knowing that she carried the legacy of the Black Viper and the love of an uncle who had sacrificed everything to keep her safe. 6 months after Lockhart's arrest, Linda stood in the training facility where her uncle now worked as a lead instructor. She had progressed rapidly through advanced programs, her natural abilities enhanced by years of unconscious preparation. The new oversight unit David helped create was called Shadow Guard. Unlike Black Viper, it operated with congressional oversight and strict accountability measures. Its mission was to identify corruption within military and intelligence services before it could cause harm. Linda was one of 12 candidates, selected for the program's first class. The selection process had been brutal, testing not just physical abilities but moral character and decision-making under pressure. She had excelled in every evaluation. Today was graduation day. Family members and military leadership filled the ceremony hall. Linda wore her dress uniform with pride, the Black Viper mark visible on her arm. It no longer represented something hidden. It represented legacy and honor. General Matthews addressed the graduates. "You are the first generation of Shadow Guard operatives. You carry the responsibility of protecting not just our nation from external threats, but also from internal corruption. This is perhaps the most important mission of all, because trust is the foundation of everything we do." One by one, graduates received their certifications. When Linda's name was called, the applause was particularly strong. Everyone present knew her story, knew how she had helped expose Director Lockhart and bring justice for those who died in Operation Silent Thunder. Her Uncle David stood to present her certification personally. As he pinned the Shadow Guard insignia on her uniform, he whispered, "Your parents would be here if they could. They're watching from wherever they are, and they're so proud." After the ceremony, several former Black Viper operatives approached Linda. They were older now, retired from active service. But they remembered David Chen and wanted to meet the niece who had helped complete his mission. "Your uncle was the best of us," one veteran said. "When things went wrong, when the program fell apart, most of us just tried to survive and forget. But David never stopped fighting for what was right. That takes a special kind of courage," another veteran added. "We heard about how you handled yourself during Lockhart's attack. Your uncle trained you well." You have the heart of a black viper. Linda felt honored by their words. These were legends in the covert operations community, and they were treating her as an equal. Brandon, the recruit who had initially mocked Linda, was at the ceremony too. He had become friends with Linda during training and had learned humility through his own struggles and failures. He approached her with genuine respect. "Congratulations, Linda. You've achieved something incredible." "Thank you, Brandon. How's your own training going?" "Good, actually. I'm hoping to qualify for Shadow Guard eventually." "You've inspired a lot of us to aim higher and be better people, not just better soldiers." As the evening concluded, David and Linda walked through the base together. The spring air was warm, and the future felt full of possibilities. "What happens now?" Linda asked. "Now you serve," David replied. "You'll be assigned to investigations, you'll root out corruption, you'll protect people who can't protect themselves. It won't be easy, and it won't always be safe. But it matters. Will you be okay?" Linda asked, concerned. After 15 years of hiding, adjusting to normal life again must be difficult. David smiled. "I'm more than okay. I have my life back. I have you back. And I get to train the next generation of operatives who will keep our country safe and honest. That's more than I ever hoped for." They stopped at a memorial wall that had recently been installed. It honored fallen operatives from various classified programs, including the 3 Black Viper members who died during Operation Silent Thunder. Their names were finally displayed publicly, their sacrifices acknowledged. "They deserved this recognition years ago," David said quietly. "They deserved so much more than being forgotten." "They're not forgotten anymore," Linda assured him, "and neither are you. Your story shows that doing the right thing matters, even when it costs everything." In the months that followed, Linda excelled in her first assignments. She investigated corruption cases, protected whistleblowers, and helped maintain integrity within military operations. She was building her own legacy, separate from but connected to her uncle's. The tattoo on her arm became widely recognized within military circles. Other operatives knew what it represented and treated her with respect. The mark that had once been hidden was now displayed with pride. Director Lockhart was convicted on 17 counts of espionage, conspiracy to commit murder, and treason. He received multiple life sentences with no possibility of parole. His network of corrupt operatives and mercenaries was dismantled systematically. 1 year after that first day at the recruitment center, Linda returned to visit. New recruits were going through orientation. Nervous and uncertain about their futures, just as she had been, she saw a young woman sitting alone in the corner, wearing oversized clothes and looking out of place. Some of the male recruits were making comments. Judging her before knowing anything about her, Linda walked over and sat beside the young woman. "First day is always the hardest. But don't let anyone make you doubt yourself. You're here for a reason." The young woman looked up, recognizing Linda from news coverage about the Lockhart case. "You're Linda Hayes. You're a legend." "I'm just someone who refused to give up," Linda replied. "Remember that when things get tough, what you look like, where you come from, what others think of you, none of that matters. What matters is your courage, your integrity, and your determination. Never forget that." As Linda left the recruitment center, she thought about how much had changed in just 1 year. She had gone from being mocked and dismissed to becoming a respected operative. She had helped bring down a traitor and reunited with her uncle. She had found her purpose and her family. The Black Viper mark on her arm would always remind her of that journey. It represented sacrifice, redemption, and the unbreakable bonds between those who serve with honor. And most importantly, it represented the truth that real strength comes from within. Regardless of what others see on the outside,